If you watch my videos lately, you may have noticed I played a bunch of Star Trek games this year, looking for the Graal Star Trek game, for a strategic game, for a sort of like 4X game that would give me a sense of the epic span of Star Trek, while retaining the Star Trek feel without, a game that has that 4X element without becoming a generic space exploration, space combat thing. Star Trek has a very specific flavor and it is very hard to capture. In fact, games that I played that have a strategic feel, that have a Star Trek theme, do not really have a Star Trek feel. They have the Star Trek theme, not the feel. And I'm talking about the Star Trek Frontiers and Risk Star Trek. They're different from one another. One I like more than the other. Which one? You need to watch my videos to know that. But they both, I think, fail in really capturing the Star Trek feel because they are both too based on attacks. The Federation can go out and destroy anything and everything. They can attack and destroy enemy bases, destroy enemy planets, neutral planets. They just, that's a planet we would like to control, so we're just going to raise it entirely. They fail to see the philosophical, cultural element of Star Trek. And I was hoping finally to have found my Star Trek Grail game when I saw Star Trek Ascendancy at Gen Con 2016. This is a game that had a lot of buzz around it. I mean, you could quite almost literally hear the humming from the alpha waves of the gamers that were crowding the booth of Gale Force 9 around these stacks of copies of Star Trek Ascendancy. So I just followed the humming, I followed the buzz, and I picked up a copy myself. At Gen Con 2016, this beauty here that was premiering there sold for $100. I'm sure that when it hits other retailers, other channels of distribution, you will find copies available for less, and then when secondhand copies will be available, then you'll find them for even less. If there will be secondhand copies, maybe the game is so good that not many people will part from their copy. But before we get there, the question is, I picked up this game with high hopes that I had found finally a 4X Star Trek game that felt like Star Trek rather than just a generic go and destroy type of game. Was I right? Was I wrong? Is this the Grail Star Trek game? Well, keep watching this video. First, we're gonna take a look at what's in the box and the general mechanics of the game, and then we will try to answer that question. Let's start with some general concepts. Each player has a home planet, Romulus for the Romulans, for example. Each player has a set of control nodes that are placed on planetary systems to mark, well, the fact that that player controls that system. And the home planet of each player has one of each type of node of structures that planets can have. Red are production centers, blue nodes are research centers, and yellow nodes are culture centers. And each can produce a corresponding type of resource. Research for research centers, production tokens from production nodes, and culture tokens from culture centers. So, each player also has starships, of course. You had individual starships, and then you have larger pieces representing fleets. Fleets also come with cards. Actually, you have cards that you can use to form your fleets. So, for example, I can place ships on this card here, and that indicates the ships that actually are represented by the one fleet token. Have the two fleet token. That means that when that is on the board, it shows the ships that are on this card. Each fleet card is actually double-sided. That means that it can be double use. For example, I can use fleet 2 to represent a large fleet of up to 9 ships, or I can use the fleet 2 token to represent a smaller ship, a smaller fleet with some special capability. In this case, for example, a battle group with that capability, but I may also have a science fleet or a mining fleet. Again, each fleet is double-sided, double use. I really like this, the fact that you can specialize your fleets that way. Each player also has a board, such as this one, where you mark the level of advancement that you have made in your shield technology and in your weapon technology. The number here is the number of research tokens that you need to spend to get to the next level. So we start, it should be flat on the table, and when it's flat on the table, then that switch doesn't fall. But I put a little vertical to show it to you. So the number here indicates the number of research that you need to spend to get to the next level. So I start with weapons that have a hidden number of 5 or more. I spend 4 resources. I can move it there. Now my hidden number is 4, and I need 6 research tokens to go to the next level. And here, the more research I spend on this other track, the better shields I get. Each player also have possible technological advancements. You always start with a specific advancement, and then you have a deck of other advancements that will be drawn randomly from this deck, and then you can spend research tokens to reach that advancement, to complete the advancement, and then actually to benefit from the advancement described on the card. So these are some basic ideas. Now, at the beginning of the game, all the planetary systems are isolated, and so you do not have to worry about initiative. Later, when the players make contact with one another, at the beginning of a turn, players can bid for initiative to decide the turn in which the players will activate. Then players will take their turns, and a player's turn is divided in 2 main phases: a building phase followed by a command phase. There's also a recharge phase, which is where you collect resources, but these are the phases where things happen. During the building phase, you may spend resources to, well, guess what? To build stuff. You can build new ships, which can be built on your star bases if you have any on the board, or they can be built in your home planet. You can build production nodes, research nodes, or culture nodes in places that you control, of course. So before you can build these, you need to take control of a planet, and we'll see how that happens. One way, if you find a virgin planet, a planet that is uncontrolled, you can colonize it, and you can build a colony during your building phase by pretty much destroying a starship. It's just that now the crew and the technology of the starship are used to start a colony, plus a culture that allows you to place a control node on a planet that is not developed and not controlled by other people. That would be the case. And then later I can spend resources. Once I control, I can spend resources from my token to build other stuff. Now, planets will have a different number of slots indicating the type of nodes that they can build there. For example, this planet only has 1 slot for developing nodes, and the only thing that they can develop there is a production node, which is cool. Production nodes are very useful. Anyways, other planets have different combinations of numbers of slots and what the slots can be used for. For example, this one only has 1 slot, but it's an open one, so I can develop on whatever the heck I want there, so production, culture, or research. This one has 2 slots, but they have to be used for research. This one has 3 slots, production, and culture, and 3 slots, production, research, and open. Large variety here. So I can build stuff during this phase. This is also, the building phase is also when I can spend research tokens to improve my shields or weapons on my main board. I can also commit research tokens to my advancement projects, the advancement projects that I may have going on in my area. These cards that are face up in my play area and that are not fully developed, the building phases when you place research on them. Once I'm done building my stuff, it is time to perform actions in the command phase. Each player has a number of command tokens, and when it is your turn, you simply activate the command tokens. You flip them face down to indicate that you used it, and now the command token is exhausted, and you use those to perform actions. You can use your command token to move, to try to establish hegemony on a planetary system, to invade a system, to initiate a space battle, to launch projects, that is when you start new advancement cards, or to commission a starbase, to place a starbase on the board, or to create a fleet. That means when you place groups of ships on one of your fleet cards. That's an expensive thing to make sure that the fleet is getting the right technology and everybody's working together. It costs a command, and it needs to be done in specific locations such as your home planet or a starbase. Now, movement. Movement is fun. When you are moving, you can move in one of two ways. It can be warp speed or it can be impulse speed. Now, movement is made on, towards, through planetary systems, and also through space lanes. There are three types of space lane. One that has a length of 4 spaces, 3 spaces, and 2 spaces. And first we're talking about impulse speed. Impulse speed, suppose that I decide to move out of here with the ship, and a single command token allows me to move a ship or a fleet. So as you can see, fleet are much more efficient in their movement. When I move out of a system, for example, announcing that I'm moving out of this system here, I decide to spend a command for this guy here. When I'm moving at impulse speed with a command, I can move by 2 spaces. But first I need to determine what kind of lane I'll get. So when I'm moving out of the system into the big unknown where no Romulan has been before, I roll this die here that only has numbers 2, 3, and 4 on it, to determine the length of the space lane that I've discovered. For a command, I just did that. Then suppose that I want to keep going, then I am going to see what's on the other side of that space lane by drawing planetary systems from this style. This stack of tiles, which has planets but also has some crazy mysterious phenomena. And some planets or systems are just, you just get there and see what happens. Some other planets or phenomena have a number here. You need to roll against that number, and there is a chance that ships that stop in that area will be destroyed based on the roll, on the test that they take there. But only when you stop in that system. If you are moving through it, for example, at warp speed, then you do not have to take that test. And you can still do fun stuff in those areas, like in planets. It just means that the surrounding area around that planet is particularly dangerous to travel through. But once you develop it there, then you can develop stuff there and still benefit from that. When you get a new planetary system, you place it there, so you know pretty much its raw capabilities, but then you need to determine what's on there exactly. And to do that, you draw cards from this deck, from the exploration deck. The result of drawing a card from here may give you a crisis, then you simply resolve the text of the crisis and you see what happens there. Crises are not always good, let's put it that way. When you have space amoebas, that's not good. It may be other types of discoveries, like the so iconic alien amusement park from a wonderful episode from the original TV show. And again, when you have these events, you simply read the text and resolve the event. It may be a virgin planet, which is kind of like nothing to report, ready to be developed. or it may be a planet that has a warp-capable civilization, or a pre-warp planet. A pre-warp planet has resources that the players can benefit from, but then is ready to be civilized. A warp civilization is not just there waiting for you to discover them and teach them the secret of fire and high technology. They have figured out a thing or two and may not be particularly friendly to other people that act like invaders. When you find a level 2 planet, first you place a number of warp tokens on the planet equal to the level, just as a reminder, and then you develop stuff based on what it says there. Here it says develop up to 2 resource nodes in priority order. So you look at what the planet has, and you always develop nodes of production first, research next, and the culture later. So here it tells me to develop up to 2, so I will place a production and a research center there. So as you can see, with different planets that have different numbers of slots, different things that they can produce, and they will be dressed up, they will receive their furniture, they will be completed by cards that are randomly drawn. You have a huge variety of different worlds that can be explored. Also, planets or planetary systems have a number printed at the bottom, which indicates the maximum number of lanes that can be placed out of there. And then suppose I keep moving from there, I go here and I discover something else, I find another planet there. So the board will change, will be developed over time as the players explore. The players start from different areas of the board, or I should say of the play area, and after a while they'll get in each other's way and they start making connections among the systems, and they'll be at that point able to communicate with one another, to interact with one another. Players also have agreement cards that can be given to the other player to signify a peace between the races, between the species, between the civilizations, and well, there are advantages from that, but also you cannot attack somebody if there is an agreement unless you betray that agreement. So, great idea here that the universe is discovered gradually, and each time it will take a different shape, a different configuration. Also, planetary systems that only have one connection can still be moved around. You can play around with them a little bit, but once they have 2 connections, then they cannot be moved, they're locked. And actually having multiple connections may be a way, in fact, to prevent the opponent from connecting areas of your net to their net when you don't want them to have access to those areas of your net. Now, we're talking about the commands. The command phase, we talked about moving. We're talking about moving at impulse speed. You can also move at warp speed, in which case you exit from where you are. You're not exactly on the board anymore. You place a warp token there to indicate the area that you used to exit, where you actually exited the board because you entered warp. Then you can also spend other command tokens to add more warp tokens to your warp stack. At the end of the turn, you automatically get another warp token there, and then at some point you can spend a command token to exit warp, and at the point you will be able to move a number not of spaces but of systems equal to the number of warp tokens on your board, on your stack. That means early on you're moving at impulse, discovering places, but then you will want to zap from one area of your system to another, and that is when warp becomes desirable. Then you can also use a command token to achieve hegemony, which is when you're trying to take control of a planet, not with hostile methods, simply you're trying to impress the locals with your charming personality and your impressive CV. To do that, you need to spend a command token and also a culture token. Then you need to determine the resistance of the planet. You can try to achieve hegemony in a planet controlled by another player, or one that is uncontrolled, such as this one. In either case, you need to determine the resistance number against which you are rolling. The resistance number is, if the planet is controlled by an opponent, the number of structures on the planet plus the number of ascendancy tokens that the opponent has. You roll a die, you add the number of ascendancy tokens that you yourself own, and if the total result is higher than the resistance number, then you take control of the planet and you place your own control node that replaces the control node of the opponent. You can try to take control of a planet that no one controls, belongs to an independent civilization, in which case, when you're trying to achieve hegemony, you are rolling against the number of structures there plus the level of civilization of the planet. And if you do achieve control, then you need to spend another cultural token. So you spend a cultural token to try to achieve hegemony, and then you need to spend another one to seal the deal if your roll is successful. You can also try to attack a planet. That's a little more brutal. In that case, you're trying to not cause too much damage. But actually, before we get there, let's talk about fight in space. Let's talk about space battles. Space battles may occur between groups that are adjacent to one another, such as in this case. It's super simple. Each player rolls a number of dice equal to the number of ships involved in that combat. Let's suppose that this fleet has 3 ships on it. You roll that number, and you're trying to roll against the you're trying to meet or exceed your own hit roll, but your hit roll will be modified by the shields of the opponent. So the level of shields of the opponent is added to your hit roll. If, for example, I have a hit roll of 4 and I'm firing against enemies that have shields of 1, now my number to hit is not 4, but 4 plus 1 is 5. And you hit with each die that rolls equal to or higher than your modified number to hit. Both players roll simultaneously, and they eliminate a number of enemy ships equal to the number of hits. Super simple, as simple as that. At the end of a round of combat, if both sides are still there, they may choose to retreat. Otherwise, they keep fighting until there's only one side that is present there, or both sides annihilate each other. And if you only have one side, it may be that one of the sides was completely destroyed or the other side retreated. When you are fighting against a planet, it's very similar, but ideally you're trying to destroy as fewer structures as possible because you want to retain control of those structures. So you still roll a number of dice for yourself, which is equal to the number of ships that you have in the attack, and the owner of the planet or another player rolling for the civilization that is there, the uncontrolled civilization. In any case, the planet rolls a number of dice, which is equal to the number of structures on the planet. This time, before you apply damage, you check the number of hits that have been achieved by the two sides. The attackers always take the damage inflicted by the planet on the ships. But if the number of hits that the attacker inflicted is higher than the number of structures on the planet, then it was an overwhelming, swift victory. The attacker takes control of the planet without destroying the structures, which is ideal. If you rolled a number of hits which is equal to the number of structures on the planet, well, that is bad because you probably basically destroyed the whole planet. So all structures on the planet are completely destroyed, and the planet now is clean, has a clean slate, and you can start rebuilding it from scratch to your liking this time. If the attacker scored fewer hits than the defender has nodes, structures on the planet, then the attacker destroys a number of nodes on the planet equal to the hits scored, which is, again, not ideal. You may still take control of the planet in a future turn, but now the planet is less valuable because there is more stuff that you need to rebuild. And this is for combat. This is for the 3 types of ways that you grab stuff or from other people, by attacking planets, by trying to achieve cultural hegemony, or also the occasional space battle. And these are, as you can see, the main actions that you can perform. Move, hegemony, invade systems, which is what I just explained, space battle, launch projects, and commission a starbase or a fleet. The game continues until a player has collected 5 Ascendancy tokens, and you collect one such token by exchanging 5 culture tokens for one of these. As you may remember, these are very important to achieve hegemony and to defend your hegemony against the opponents. Also, 5 of these give you victory, so that's pretty sweet. Also, you achieve victory if you control all 3 home planets in the game, which frankly, it's quite hard. It's a quite hard victory to pull off. Yes, to me, this is a superb Star Trek game. It is exactly what I was looking for. A game that has an epic span, that has quite a level of complexity, a really satisfying level of depth, a strong 4X feel, and a very strong Star Trek feel. Finally, we have a Star Trek game where you do not have to destroy planets. You do not have to attack everybody that you see to gain points and to advance your position in the game. You can be the Federation, and then, as it should be, you're trying to expand your influence through cultural example. You lead by example, through diplomacy, through trades, and this kind of thing, by peaceful means. Or you can be the Klingons, and then you are going around attacking right and left because of your concept of honor and war. So finally, a game where somebody really thought about the original show and what was important in that show, and did not just paint a Star Trek theme over generic war game mechanics, but gave us both aspects. That flexibility there, it's very welcome in mechanical terms because it gives me more game options, but it's so immensely welcome in thematic terms and in the terms of feel. I have a Star Trek game that feels like Star Trek. Hooray! The 3 groups work in different ways. The Romulans also feel very Romulan. They have first strike technology, allows them to roll dice in the first round of combat and inflict damage before the opponent inflicts damage. Usually that would be simultaneous, but the Romulans, well, we know there's those sneaky bastards. They have that technology. That was not meant. I like the Romulans. Actually, they're probably my favorite group in here, but I like them all, but they play differently from one another. Huge replay value. Play as the Romulans or the Federation, it will be different experience whatsoever. Every play value, there is just this astounding way that the game has of building a map, which is completely different each game because of the connections, because of the planets, because of the different levels of civilization that you'll find on the planets. Just mind-blowing. This is a galaxy in a box. This is Star Trek in a box. Thematically, you have everything. You have the bellicose options, you have the war-based options, you have the cultural options, you have the developments, you have the trade agreements, you have the diplomacy, and again you have, amazingly, for an analog game, you could have a video game with an enormous universe to explore, but for an analog game you do have the sense of an immense expanse of space, full of strange new world, unexplored areas. You have the sense of mystery, of almost, I would say, mystical discovery of the incredible mystical depth of the universe that Star Trek, the TV show, manages to evoke, and the game manages to capture a great deal of that. It is a phenomenal Star Trek game. Now, even if you are not into Star Trek, if you are into 4X games in general, to me, this is a no-brainer, instant buy. Players that enjoy the genre games will be, I believe, very pleased with this game. It has all of the good things that 4X games give you, which is the sense of progression, of advancement. You advance your technologies, you advance your influence over expanding areas of space, you build new stuff, you develop new things, you increase your fleet, you gain new technologies. And here, first you have your cozy area of the galaxy that you're exploring, then you get in contact with other people and you start forming deals that are very fragile and problematic. So there is an increasing complexity thanks to the number of advancements that you get. Simply, the more stuff you have on the board, the more powerful you become, the more momentum you gain. That is to say, you gain bigger stuff and more stuff. So you have this increasing span, which is very pleasant to follow. It's very pleasant to follow the development of the races and their narrowing of the gaps from one another until they start interacting, and then all sort of other complexities emerge. It is a wonderful 4X game. Again, it has all of the beautiful things of this type of game. The exploration, the combat is very simple, but you put so much work into preparing yourself, into developing the resources that then you will use to build some advancements that then will be combined with other advancements to finally get you ready when you enter battle, to have all of the possible modifiers that you need. It is about rolling dice and see pretty much who rolls high numbers, but again, there is so much work that you did behind that if you correctly prepared yourself and you put together some nice combos of effects, when you get there, that rolling of dice means so much. It's the action in which maybe 2-3 hours of gameplay coalesce into like a wonderful action that again is much more significant and much deeper than it would appear at first sight. As a 4X game, however, again, if people that like the kind of game will fall in love with this one. However, it also has I would say, limitations, quote unquote, negative aspects, maybe the caveats that are associated with this genre. Like most 4X games, this is a gamer's game. It's a game for committed players. Committed in terms of monetary investment. This is not an inexpensive game. Learning the game, not the simplest game out there. The rulebook does a pretty good job of teaching you the game. There is an almost criminal thing that is neglected here. It's almost criminal that they do not have an index in the rulebook. So you're gonna have to flip through like an almost 30-page rulebook just to double check these or that thing. Missing thing will be very easy. So you're committed in terms of expenditure, the time to learn the game, and then the time to play the game. This is a long game. It's one of those games you should have snacks, energy drinks. It will take a long time to play. Downtime may be an issue if some of your friends just decide that they want to consider every possible option and and all those like paranoid things that downtime players do. So there is that aspect there. You are really playing for many hours, which in a sense is also necessary. If in a shorter game you do not have that epic sense, you cannot have both. You cannot have an epic span in 15 minutes. Yes, we had games that they're called tiny epic, this or that, which are beautiful. They're gems in what they achieve, but the epic is ironic. A true epic poem is a long poem. It's a poem that gives you a sense of immersion, that you're traveling in a parallel world, that you're immersing yourself in a reality that is complex and rich and nuanced. And you can see this from the ancient epics of Homer, of Virgil, to the Renaissance epic. And then we have modern epics, which really is sci-fi. Sci-fi and superhero comics, in a sense, to me, are the two genres that most closely resemble ancient and Renaissance epic. And Star Trek Ascendancy is epic in that sense. But again, it takes commitment. It takes commitment to read a long epic poem from the Renaissance, and it takes commitment to play Star Trek Ascendancy or other 4X games out there. This being said, it takes less time to play Ascendancy than to read The Frenzy of Orlando by Ludovic Ariosto, for example, a wonderful epic poem that also requires some commitment. I recommend that poem as much as I recommend Ascendancy. Different ways of creating an epic experience, but again, it takes commitment. It's gonna be long. But on one hand, if you're not really committed to the genre, that may be a minus. In truth, if you like this sort of genre, if you get into the mentality of enjoying seeing this development of civilizations over centuries or maybe millennia, it's a phenomenal experience. At the end, you will be exhausted, but the sort of like exhaustion that makes you smile and you have a lot of nice memories in your mind, because the game has such a strong sense of story that you will have like a chronicle of a civilization of the future in your mind, and you will have experienced that, you will have contributed to shape it. The memories will remain with you for a long time. So yes, it takes commitment, but definitely it pays off. One thing I think, if I can think of something that I believe the game would benefit from, is probably a third victory condition. You have the Ascendancy and you have control of the home planets. Control of the home planets, I mean, it seems really tough to me. I think, and that means that you will go for Ascendancy. Once you realize that, everybody will go for Ascendancy. I like to have another more realistic and viable victory condition. My modest proposal, other players out there can tell me what they think. I'm interested in hearing your opinions. I think it would be great to have a third victory condition based simply on the sheer number of systems that you control. 12, 15, I don't know what the number may be, just a large number, so you do not necessarily have to go for that home base, but if you are enough of a pain in the neck to other players and you steal control of planets, from them, or you expand in a corner of the galaxy and in an unchecked fashion the players ignore what you're doing, you still create such a critical mass that you achieve enough control, enough influence to be called the victor. I like that. It would be a more flexible victory condition that I think would make it more viable for players to attempt different strategies, because it would be such a flexible thing, because you could grab planets right and left, explore areas, steal planets through various means, so that all three civilizations could do what they do best in that fashion. So it's a superb game. It's a superb game. Again, I don't really have negative things to say, just things that may not work well in all groups, or that may be even make the game more interesting as variants, but nothing that I can think is objectively wrong or bad about this game. This game is absolutely a superb game. It will take a specific type of player to really enjoy it, but with the right group, with a group of committed 4X players, then Star Trek Ascendancy is going to deliver a total blast. It's going to be one of the best games in your collection. I believe so. I really cannot endorse this game more. It's a great game. Players of this genre game will be absolutely pleased with it, and gamers in general that enjoy deep, long, complex games, I believe they will also have a lot of fun playing this game.